And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory. Drunvalo Melchizedek, founder of the Flower of Life workshops. He is a world traveler. He's given workshops, seminars, lectures on sacred geometry, human energy fields, spirituality, meditation, and living in the heart. His meditation with the angels and his work with the prana and energy healing has helped tens of thousands of people. First-time guest on Coast to Coast. Drunvalo, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you.
Good to have you with us. You have quite a following, by the way.
Well, they're around the world, I guess.
You know, I've been looking at your work, maybe over the last 6 months to a year, but I have a dear friend in St. Louis. His name's Johnny Rose. He's been a buddy of mine for years. And he sent me an email a few weeks ago and said, George, we have that kind of relationship, right? So he says, George, when are you going to have Drunvalo Melchizedek on the show? And I went, John, I guess we'll get to work on that. And here you are. So tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I spent about 14 years studying a certain part of mathematics called sacred geometry, and with a focus of trying to understand the human body energy field. It took about 2.5 years, and I mean every single day, every night, and to just figure out the core, the center of the energy field. And then it took another 12 years to actually define it and mathematically clearly define it. And once that was done, then I was able to go very quickly to understand a lot of the ancient thoughts in Egypt and Sumeria and India and Tibet, a lot of the ideas that they had and a lot of the things that they were saying suddenly became very clear, became understandable. You've
got a heavy background in mathematics and physics. Were you able to use that for this?
Yeah, it helped.
Yeah.
Definitely. But sacred geometry is different than calculus or something like that. You don't need computers. You don't need measuring sticks. You don't need anything. All you need is a straight line, a compass, and a pen and pencil, and you can figure out the most detailed aspects of the entire reality, galaxies, anything. It's amazing how it works.
In your work, Serpent of Light, Beyond 2012, you talk about this movement which cuts across like a snake. Tell me about this energy force.
Well, the human body, and this is one of the things I discovered when I finally was able to see the human energy field, which is about 60 feet in diameter around every person on Earth. What we discovered was that this same very complex electromagnetic field that's around a human being is identical around the Earth. It's exactly the same thing.
Huh.
And the kinds of movements that we know of, like in Kundalini yoga or Kriya yoga,
right,
these kinds of things apply to the Earth also. It wasn't me who understood this first. Strangely enough, it was several indigenous tribes around the world that began to talk to me about this.
This energy force around an individual, does it change by the individual? I mean, if someone is sick, let's say, will that energy field be smaller than someone who's pretty healthy? Or if someone's positive as opposed to someone who's negative, would there be that change?
There are changes, yes. Not in exactly the way you're thinking. Deep emotional trauma. The primary core that's around the body is in the shape of what's called a star tetrahedron. It's two tetrahedrons that are interlocked to what actually make a cube. And the upper one, the one that's facing to the sky, is male, and the one facing down to the bottom is female. And they represent all the polarities in your emotional body and in your body also. But they also represent the primary polarities, your mother and father. And so if you've had deep emotional trauma, say your dad beat you up when you were little or your mother did something to you, well, you can actually see this on the computer screens. It will reflect the upper tetrahedron. If it was your father, will constrict. It'll get smaller.
Huh.
And so you can clearly see where the emotional problems are, and the mental problems too, where the physical problems are all interrelated.
Interesting. Well, I thank God I was raised by two great folks who are still there.
It helps.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Tell me, I'm going to also look at you tonight as not a psychic, but someone who picks up the pulse of this planet. These events that are occurring around us right now, I have never seen a time where more people seemed stressed, whacked out, doing bizarre things. Are you sensing that too?
Well, I'm in a different country every 3 weeks for 25 years.
Jeez.
And I get to talk to people all over the world. And believe me, the whole world is going through this. It's not the United States. It's everywhere. It's even in small indigenous tribes out in the middle of nowhere and jungles and everything else. They're feeling it too. Everybody is.
What's causing it?
Well, there's a lot of factors going on here, and I have been studying this. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I have been deeply studying this for at least 45 years.
That's an expert.
and there are three different levels that are interconnecting with each other. I would call it the human level.
Okay.
And on the human level, there's a whole array. You have the secret government that is controlling all the other governments and practically everything that's going on and most of the money. I think they have 86% of all the money in all the banks of the world. And their agenda is really different than anyone else. And then you have the governments themselves, and their agendas have to conform in a way to the secret government, but they also have their other agendas, and the militaries of these governments have covert reasonings of their own. It gets very complex. The corporations of the world have their own. I mean, the oil companies don't want to see alternative fuel, and
right.
The pharmaceutical companies don't want to see alternative ways of healing. And so all these mixtures of things that are going on in the human world are all at play against each other. And then on top of this, you have extraterrestrials that are here. And there's lots of them, a lot more than what most people know. The United States government told me that the maximum that they knew, this was 10 years ago maybe, was 58. But there's a lot more than that. I believe, from what I understand, about 250,000 cultures are here.
Cultures? These
are different areas of space and time and dimension that they come from. And these are the less evolved beings. The more evolved beings don't need spaceships to be able to be here or to know what's going on. They don't have to do that. And so this is a huge array. During the 80s, we had the Greys that were abducting everyone, and they abducted close to 5 million people. And the cattle mutilation, which was really high-level laser technology that there was only 5 surgeons on Earth that could do. And and behind them were the reptiles and all this stuff. And we've heard all this stuff before, many times before. They're gone now. The last time they did anything was about 4 or 5 years ago in Argentina. They did about another 150 cattle mutilations. And that's the last we've heard of them. I believe I know where they are and what they're doing, but who cares?
Wherever they are, why did they go?
They had to. They didn't have a choice. We are at war with them, human beings are, and we won. In fact, if you go back to Hermes out of Greece, 2,000 years ago,
all right, he
wrote a book called The Emerald Tablets. If you read in there, he talks about every time we come in the cycles of this period of time, the ETs from other areas try to take us over every time because it's our weak points. This is our point when we are, I'll explain this in a little bit, but it all has to do with the cycles of time. But we are at a place in the cycles of time where we are very weak, very vulnerable. And there are certain ET races that are not very evolved that are always trying to mess with us. And they always lose.
And they've got the ability to get here. How do they lose, though? How do we overpower them?
Well, the story goes that's written in there, and it's on the walls in Egypt. It talks about that there is this spaceship that is underneath the Sphinx, about a mile down, according to them. It's flat on top. It's round and flat on the top and the bottom. So it's like a coin. And according to them, every 13,000 years when we come to this place, which is tied to this date of December 21st, 2012.
Okay.
Then somebody on Earth finds their way to that ship, and which has been put there long, long ago to protect humanity, and that person, whatever they think, happens. And so in this particular case, it was a woman out of Peru. She was only 23 years old. She made her way there, from what I understand. And when she brought that up in the sky, she said, okay, from now on, the Greys are going to get sick, and they'll keep getting sicker until they die if they stay here. And it was shortly after that they left.
It happened. It's almost like a wish that came true.
Well, for her it's a wish.
Yeah.
Whatever she thinks. And that's a myth. Whether or not it's true or not, I don't know, but I kind of believe it.
All right, we're going to take this quick break, and we'll be right back. Drunvalo Melchizedek is our special guest right here on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory. Drunvalo Melchizedek is with us tonight. Special program throughout the night. We'll take calls a little bit later on in the evening with him. Let's get back to this UFO under the Sphinx. How did it get there? I guess it came first, huh?
It's actually written in the Emerald Tablets exactly how to do it. And you have to learn how to move fourth dimensionally. I haven't ever done it. I don't know. But I have been in the position exactly where you have to be in the pyramids to do that, but I didn't do it.
Tell me about these cycles of time. Exactly what do you mean by these cycles of time?
Well, the cycles of time are the aspect of all of this that are somewhat overlooked by a lot of people. We're looking at the human involvement, we're looking at the ET involvement, and we're looking at a lot of things. But the cycles of time are what actually makes everything happen. It's, from my understanding, was speaking with many spiritual masters around the world, is that there is a cosmic DNA. There is this unfoldment of events that are taking place that don't have much to do with us. They have to do with the movement of planets and stars and galaxies and how these movements take place. And so, in the cycles of time, we look at our watch and we see that it's certain, like it's 10:38 p.m. here right now. We see it digitally, but we don't think that actually it's not just a digital idea, but it's a movement of the Earth itself. It's the rotation of the Earth, and you can keep doing this. The day is one rotation around. We know all these things, but there are a lot of cycles in the Earth that are not understood very well, at least by most people on Earth. There is the tilt of the axis, which is about 23.5 degrees right now, and over 40,000 years, that goes through, I can't remember exactly what it was. It's the actual angles. It goes from about 21 to 24 degrees, roughly. And that angle is really crucial to the weather patterns and to all kinds of ways that we perceive things. And the actual orbit around the sun, we kind of think of that as this fixed thing that doesn't really change, but it does. It moves from an elliptical pattern to a near-perfect circle, then back to elliptical pattern over about 100,000 years. And so there's a lot of changes. The one that's coming up right now for us is the axis of the Earth has a wobble in it. It's literally wobbling like a top slowing down. And that wobble for the little, if you think of a stick going out of the Earth, and that's the axis, that it moves around in an elliptical pattern that takes what people say 26,000 years. Actually, it's been calculated precisely in the year 2000 to be 25,771.5 years. And that's what that date, December 21st, 2012 is. On that date, one full cycle is completed on that specific day. And throughout time, if you go back into ancient Tibet or India, they talk about this cycle, and they talk about it in terms of yugas or ages that are around there, and how consciousness changes as we move within this cycle. And very importantly, on this particular day of December 21st, the polarity shifts. We go not only from they talk about how on the backside of this cycle, from the 13,000 years coming down to where we are now,
Yeah.
that's a male cycle. And when we enter into the other side of it, it becomes a female cycle. One side is dark, the male side is dark, the female side is light. And it's and interesting enough, the scientists of the world right now believe that the North and South Pole are about to reverse polarities.
Could that be dangerous for us?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If the poles were to change, if they were just to switch to do it very quickly and go from north to south, that would not be so dangerous. But what the Russians learned is something that's very important. When they created the Mir space station, the first two people that went up there, after about 2 weeks without being inside of the magnetic field of the Earth, at that point it was so weak it was like they might as well have been in space, they went insane, and they also lost their memories. They had no memory at all. They didn't even know their name.
Just erased it.
It was just completely erased everything, which is what a lot of scientists believe, is that our memory is tied to magnetics.
Yes.
And so if this pole were to go away, and it doesn't happen instantaneously. It takes about 14 days or maybe a little more. And so if these poles, when they go from north to south, what is believed is there's a period of time when there is no magnetics. And if that magnetics goes for more than 14 days, several things begin to happen. The people that are on Earth are going to just not even remember their name and probably go crazy. The Russians determined that this craziness was incurable. At least they didn't know how to cure it.
We would be magnetically pulled apart practically.
Yeah, we would, by no magnetics. We need magnetics to keep us alive.
Exactly.
And then there's another thing, too. And this is what the Mayans are talking about. This is part of their prophecy, is that they believe that there's going to be a physical pole shift any day now, actually.
Does that mean what's up is down and what's down is up?
No, it means that the axis of the Earth will move to a new location, not just a new south and north become south and south become north, but literally move to a new location. 13,000 years ago, at the other end of this cycle, there was a pole shift. And the science knows that. And they believe that the axis at that before that was in Hudson Bay. That's kind of a guess on their part.
Well, they're starting to record this shift as we speak. I think it's moved like 50 or 100 miles already.
Oh yeah, but it's made huge jumps. There was a point here a few years ago where the South Pole went off the coast of California for 24 hours.
Jeez.
And there is major things going on at the South Pole where the lines of energy of the magnetics go out at the South Pole, then they wrap around and go in at the North Pole. But what scientists are finding all over, there's these huge holes where the lines are going out and then wrapping right back in again. There was a movie about this on Nova in 2003 trying to describe this. But since then, it's become much, much, much worse. And so if in a pole shift, they don't know. Scientists, and we've spent a lot of time studying this one because Edgar Casey predicted this a long time ago, and so we were looking at it carefully. And in a pole shift, nobody's ever been able to figure out how in the heck a planet as big as this, with this much mass and inertia, could suddenly move, 500 miles away, just actually move off its axis. The amount of energy that would take would be unbelievable. It would be something like a moon hitting the Earth or something to do that. But then a few years ago, there was a discovery made, and this discovery is probably the most intelligent idea that I am aware of in terms of how this is possible, and it's tied to the magnetics. And what they've discovered is that the crust of the Earth is about 20 to 40 miles thick. And underneath that is the upper mantle, and it's a rock. It's homogeneous over the whole Earth. And that's what holds the crust of the Earth to the inner core of the Earth.
Is it like a shell for an egg?
Yes, it's very much the same thing. It's like a shell and an egg.
Okay.
About the same proportions, maybe even thinner. And then, But what they found out, and they found this out in science, in labs, is that this rock that is holding the crust to the together to the Earth with no magnetics becomes a liquid.
That could be devastating.
And that means that the crust now is free to move. It takes 14 days, or approximately that long, for the mantle, the upper mantle, to become a liquid.
Drunvalo, tell me a little bit about this ET visitation and when you think this might come. Is it around 2012?
Well, okay, let me talk about that for just a second before we go into that. The idea that December 21st, 2012 is when this will happen, according to the Mayans, that's the least likely day.
Least likely.
It's not going to happen on that day. They said forget it. What they call, they have what is called a window of time, and the name they give to it is the end of time. It's a window that's about 7 or 8 years long. And this window, this time, I believe, as I understand what they had to tell me, began on October 24th, 2007, and it ends sometime in 2015.
So that's a pretty good window.
Yeah, and all they're willing to say is that somewhere in that window is when it's going to happen. They will not say for sure, because I don't think they know exactly precisely the time, because it is when the Earth actually makes its move, is all they can say is it's sometime in there.
But they see the signs, don't they?
Yeah, and that date of October 24th, 2007 is a very interesting date. That is the day when that comet came into the solar system called Comet Holmes, and then it blew up, and it started expanding into a big blue sphere, and it literally became bigger than the sun. It's now registered as the largest object ever observed in our solar system in history, and it did that on October 24th, 2007. Now, the Hopi prophecy that you were talking about, they have a prophecy that began, happened about 200 years ago, and it's called the Blue Star Prophecy.
Well, this one had a blue tail.
It turned, yes, but it turned into a blue sphere.
Yes.
Bigger than the sun.
Yeah.
And so the Hopi now believe that was the Blue Star Prophecy, and the Mayans believe that is the moment when the end of time began.
The clock is...
And so we're in it. And so when it'll happen, I don't think they're going to prophesize a certain day. In fact, they told me no, that it just is sometime in here, and that's all they can say.
When this happens, as Edgar Cayce has predicted in terms of Earth changes, will we see massive upheaval in that? You know, we're already seeing, ice melting in the Arctic.
Oh yeah,
we're seeing it. We're seeing shifts everywhere.
And look out for Ross's shelf.
Yeah, these things break off, and
it's cracking. Holes are forming all over it, and then then forming lakes that are going all the way down to the bottom, where you can see the water running, and then coming back up and forming bigger ones. The scientists I talked to that are working down there say this thing's going to go.
There are island nations now that can't sustain an increase in ocean sea levels.
Well, almost all the islands most of them are going to have a real problem, because the water rises up over the top of their freshwater system, and the salt goes in and invades their freshwater, and that's it. It's over.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. They have to abandon that whole region.
And then you also have the coral reefs that are all around them that are dying. This is another huge problem that is going on, and a lot of people are not aware, because when they figured it out, they became very quiet about it after that. But the environmental scientists were quiet for years, because the amount of carbon dioxide that we have been emitting into the atmosphere, we should have had problems, far worse problems, years and years ago, but we didn't, because the carbon dioxide was somehow disappearing. They didn't know where it went. And it was about 3 years ago they figured it out. It has been absorbed into the oceans. And at first they thought, oh, good, we found out where it is. And then there was this really somber attitude that came out after that, when they figured out exactly what it meant. Right now, the carbon dioxide levels in our oceans are what they were 100 million years ago.
Okay, how can that be?
it's just fact. They've absorbed enough carbon dioxide that they now have the same levels that they were 100 million years ago. And what this means is that most of the life that's in our oceans now is going to die. The things that were there 100 million years ago, like sharks, etc., will make it through. And then something else a new kind of ocean will evolve out of all of this.
And maybe new species, maybe not.
Probably. Something that likes carbon dioxide, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we never... That was a huge shock to everybody I knew that was involved in this, that's where it was going. They had no idea. And that's a large of the things, that's a big problem that's causing the coral reefs to die. I mean, we're going to have over 80% of all the coral reefs in the world will be gone in our lifetime.
I've got a regular guest who comes on the program, Robert Felix, and he says we're in the beginning stages of an ice age. What do you think?
I say absolutely.
You do? Okay.
In fact, I could go into great detail if you want me to.
Yeah, please. You know, he's a rebel, and there aren't a lot of scientists and climatologists out there who would agree with him.
We know the cycle. We know it very well. And it's all been presented to the United Nations, and they just freak out and will not look at it. But Dr. John Hamaker was the primary person who headed all of this. And he went around to all the ancient lake beds all over the world and took these core samples out of the ancient lake beds. And there you can just see it. There is about roughly 90,000 years with no pollen, followed by about 10,000 years with pollen, followed by 90,000 years. It's an average. It's about the warm period is about 8 to 12,000 years, and the ice ages are that 90,000 years is an average. They can go up to 120,000 years. But that cycle has been going on for at least 250 million years that he figured out, and other people have taken it back over 500 million years. And so and we've had a warm period for over 10,000 years. So an ice age would come anyway, even if there were no human beings on Earth.
Right. The cycle.
It's a cycle, but we're adding to it. So we've moved it up. Nobody's going to know how many years. It maybe it's 500 years or 1,000 years, but we've moved it up closer. And what that cycle is based on is one word: minerals. That's it. Period. 100%. Well, not counting the sun, which is another factor. That's a whole other subject. But if you're only looking at the Earth, it's minerals, because what John Hamaker found is that when the minerals, we'll start at this part of the cycle where we are right now today, when the minerals run out, and that's what's been going on for 20, 25, 30 years, a little bit, actually since about 1940 when the big fire happened in Alaska, at 41 I think it was. And the minerals run out, and then what happens is the trees and the plants and the organic structure all begins to get sick and die, and then the forest fires begin. Mm-hmm. And every acre of trees has 50,000 tons of carbon dioxide in it, and that begins to create the global warming pattern that we're experiencing right now. And then it keeps going until there's this period, and this is all scientifically figured out. It's not just me saying this. There's about a 20-year period where the weather goes crazy. It's just what it's been doing for the last 20 years. Right. I mean, we seem to be in a lull right now. Well, but I don't know if that's going to last. It could be anything. I mean, the El Nino, when it goes, you read in the environmental books, if it happens once, it changes the world's weather patterns. But it might take 20, 30 years for it to happen. It's happened in the last 12 out of the last 13 years. So, I mean, whatever your weather is, who knows what it would be, assuming that none of these other things took place. Though I agree with you, talking about the sun as a program all by itself. Oh, yeah. Let me ask you this. We are in one of the biggest times of minimum sunspots. They're not there. I know. It's really strange. It's got to have an effect as we get to 2012. I mean, it's almost as if they truly understood all this. It's all related, isn't it? Well, yeah, the sunspots are really important, and this may have to do with why the Earth's magnetic poles are reversing, too. And that is directly connected to that whole thing. I mean, everything is connected to everything. In fact, if you knew what I knew about sacred geometry and the planets and the orbits and everything, it's unbelievable. It's like people look at the moon and they say, Well, it's just it's a 27 point something days. It's never-ending cycle, and it's female, and it is very hard to calculate in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's been done. But did you know that that is precisely the day of the sun? The sun rotates in exactly 27 point something things, exactly the same as the moon.
Yeah.
And in the geometry of the human body, when we were unfolding these electromagnetic fields around the human body, first things we discovered was that there's this circle with another circle on top of it, and the proportions are identical to the size of the Earth and the size of the moon.
See, how do you explain that? How do you explain this sacred geometry? I mean, one could think there was incredible intelligent design behind all of it, which I believe.
Well, there definitely is. Whoever created the universe was a single mind, because we could show, I can show clearly to anybody how every single thing in existence, at least on Earth anyway, and anything that we can see in the solar system, in the universe, is all based on sacred geometry. It's the same patterns over and over and over, created again and again and again. And even things that you would never believe were geometrical, like love and emotions and feelings, they're geometrical. It was Manfred Klein who was the one who figured that out. He's written up even in the Wall Street Journal that they can take somebody in one room and they can watch their electromagnetic field from another room and tell what they're feeling, and then they can convert that into a geometrical form that you hold into your hand. Everything, no matter whether it's seen or unseen, is geometrical. And mathematics themselves is not, many people think that mathematics is the basic or the core of the reality, but really it's not true. It's shape and proportion, and that's what creates the mathematics. When you speak at workshops and seminars, what major issue do most people bring up to you? What's on their mind? Well, they come to me mostly to learn about consciousness and how it works inside the body, and so that, to me, that is the most important thing to understand right now, and so we've taken many of the different understandings from all around the world and applied them into a single system so that we can understand how it all works, and you can truly increase your level of awareness of things. But on a really simple everyday life, they want to know exactly how to deal with the problems that they have in their lives. Yeah. I mean, we're all human, and we all have families, and we have to make money, and we have to do all these things. These are priorities. Yeah, you have to. You can't just forget about that stuff. I mean, there's been times when I've gone off into the forest and just forgot about the world in order to understand things. But not, you can't do that. I can't do that now. I got 5 kids. I can't. No, you can't do that. And so again, in everything that I've learned, it really comes down to understanding how the energies move through your body, and so that you're able to conserve and create your own energy. There's a way where you can breathe through these energy fields that are around your body so that they begin to spin in 2 different directions. And when they do, this disc appears at the base of your chakra system, at the base of your spine, right close to it, and a sphere appears around your body. And this is called the Merkaba. In ancient Egypt, it was called the Merkaba. This is what you've got in your book, Living in the Heart, right? It's actually the Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, Volume 1 and 2. Is where we first talked about that. That's one of the first books that came out. And but the Living in the Heart is part of it, because the brain is what is the generator that creates the Merkaba field. It's actually the left brain and the right brain rotating in opposite directions that creates this energy field that all of the ancient world knew and understood. And but that is only the external field. The internal fields have to do with the heart, and so you have 2 different consciousness parts in the body. In modern day life, we only think of the brain. We think the brain is the greatest thing that ever happened, but the heart is way older, and it is far more stronger, and it has more intelligence than the brain does. And I can actually show you this.
Okay.
When you look at conception, and you look at a human baby, it begins as a sphere, which is it's all geometrical too. It begins as a sphere, which is the ovum. And then we often think that it takes one sperm to go in there and fertilize the egg, but it actually takes either 10, 11, or 12 of them, making a pattern on there that allows the 11th, 12th, or 13th one to enter in. And then there begins, through mitosis, it divides into 2 cells, and then it divides into 4, and they're in a tetrahedron when they do that.
Yes.
And then they go into 8, and they form a star tetrahedron, which is also a cube. And then they keep progressing geometrically through this whole pattern until they get to 512 cells. And at that point, they form what is called a toroidal field. It's one of the unique energy fields of the universe, and everything in the universe is based on it. There's no exceptions. And that toroidal field, as it keeps growing, what it becomes is the human heart. And there's a place when you and I and everybody that's listening to this, there's a time in your life when you were a human heart and nothing else.
And nothing else.
You had no,
That's something.
You had no arms and legs and brain or anything. You were just a heart. And the heart started beating.
Beating away. Yeah.
And doctors for years have said, well, how can this be? There's no brain. There's no intelligence. And then it was HeartMath out of Stanford who discovered that there is a brain in the heart. It's small. It's only 40,000 cells. But it's brain cells, not heart cells.
And it keeps beating for years.
It keeps beating. And then at a point, after it's all developed, then the body comes out of the heart and forms the fetus, and then the heart is pulled into the chest cavity, and we see the familiar fetus that we're used to. But this shows, at least intuitively, that the heart is older and in one way more important than the brain.
That's a great analogy, too.
And you can go back into ancient Egypt, and when they would mummify a king or a pharaoh or somebody important, they would take all the organs out of the body, and they would make 4 clay jars, and they would put all the organs into those 4 clay jars except for 2, the brain and the heart. And the heart, they would put back in the body because they said it was essential. They couldn't move on to the other levels without it. What did they do with the brain? They threw it in the garbage can.
They got rid of it, yeah.
Because it was useless to them. And to understand that took me about 15 years.
That's pretty good. That is pretty. Are you saying that consciousness may originate from not just the brain, but primarily the heart?
Yes. This is what all the ancient teachings from the Vedas, from the Tibetans, from the Tibetan all over, this is what they understand, and it's their secret of their secrets, is that creation itself began in the heart. The outer world, according to all of these people, does not actually exist. It isn't there. There's nothing there. It's just pure consciousness, and it's external. It appears external to us, but it's really internal.
And you know what's amazing, too? Simply, like Valentine's Day. It's, directly related about the heart. Symbolism everywhere. The heart. Wherever you go, it's the heart.
We remember on a level that we had when, at the last pole shift 13,000 years ago, we had a big shock. And we dropped in consciousness. We lost our ability to protect ourselves. We lost our memory. We went back into being hairy barbarians. We had to learn fire all over again. And we had a huge shock. And this time it's going to be different. It's going to be much better. And even though we don't look like it, we're far more prepared this time. And people are going to be amazed.
Let's chat a little bit about this ET visitation you were talking about, and more about consciousness of the brain with our special guest tonight, Drunvalo Melchizedek, Serpent of Light Beyond 2012. We'll be back in a moment right here on Coast to Coast AM. So he could very well be right in the middle of this window. How long it goes, it's anybody's guess. Next hour, we'll take phone calls with our special guest, Drunvalo Melchizedek. We'll be back with more questions for him, though, on Coast to Coast AM. I got to find out a little bit more about this ET connection, Drunvalo. The visitations that I guess the Hopis have talked about and the Mayans have talked about as well, and even though you say they're here now, is there going to be a major type event where we all look to the skies like the movie Independence Day?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit more out of beyond that kind of imagination. What I know is this, from speaking again with indigenous tribes all over the world, is they talk to them all the time. They visit them all the time on a weekly basis. It's not unusual for them, but they're also able to enter into fourth dimensional consciousness easily, where we don't even know what it is. Most of us don't. And going back again to the ideas that the external world is not really what we think it is something else. It has to do with pure consciousness. Once we understand that, then there's going to be an enormous revelation in human consciousness. It's one we've already learned a long time ago. We've forgotten it, and really we're just going to remember it. It's going to feel like a gift. But the ETs are here now. They've been here for a long time. We've also been interacting primarily with ones that are very low level and don't have good intentions on us. I mean, the Greys wanted to eliminate us completely. But it's not how it really is out there in the universe. Our galaxy, for example, is a living being also. It has the same energy fields around it that our human body does. Mm-hmm. And they're not at war. The idea of Star Wars and everything's out there fighting is just simply not true. They're at peace, and they love each other, and they're taking care of each other. There's only a few that are growing up and understanding that there's more to life than what they think, and those are the ones that we've been having problems with. The majority of them that are here now really love us and care about us. And also there are ones that are inside the earth, and these that are inside the earth really care about us and have a very personal thing about it. And they really want to help us, and they're going to. The protocol is, as I've understand it from many of the tribes, is that once we are to the proper level where we can actually see them and communicate with them, then the next thing is we have to be introduced to our mother and our father. And this, now you're getting into the ancient Sumerian records of what they were talking about there. They believe that there was the planet Marduk, and sure. Nephilim came in. And in there they're talking about another planet that is not in our solar system that actually was the father aspect, which was Sirius, from Sirius B, third planet out. And that race and this race that was here, the Nephilim, joined together and created the human race according to the oldest records on Earth. And that's the cuneiform tablets, out of Samaria. Yep. And before, what all these indigenous people are saying is that we will first meet our mother and our father, and what they're saying is we will first meet our father. These are the Syrians. They're about 10 to 16 feet high. Females are about 10 to 12 feet. Males are about 14 to 16 feet high.
Truly the giants.
They're tall. Yeah. There's much taller beings than that, but they're
really?
They're the next level of consciousness, which shows up in the sacred geometrical patterns. And they really care about us a lot. They have saved our life already, and we're not aware of it. Because of what's going on in the sun. There's something happening on the sun right now that is far more than what we think. And we would not be able to survive this with our present level of consciousness without their help. And they truly have helped us. But according to the indigenous people, they are in caves all over the world right now. And there will come a time soon, and I don't know when that'll be, but it'll be inside this window, when we will be introduced to them. And I don't know if this is before the shift or after the shift, but they've never told me that. But they all agree that there will be a point where we will meet our Father first, and then our Mother, and then the rest of the universe.
Will this planet ever be the same after that?
No.
That's pretty emotional for a lot of people.
No, we'll never be the same, and we won't even be on the same frequency of consciousness. We'll be a whole other thing, and it'll be a good thing, because we fell. We were down in a very dark place, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
And we're about to go into a very light and loving place. And so, and where we're going to find out that our brothers and sisters really aren't out there to get us. They're out there to help us remember who we really are.
Will we do away with war? Will we do away with...
We won't need that. That's stupid.
That's all gone.
That's like the right hand taking a knife and stabbing the left hand. Any all higher level consciousness beings know that there is only one spirit that moves through everything. Just one. And it's always been this way. And we can't remember that. But when we do remember that, we will know that when you look in the eyes of another person, you're looking into your own eyes. When the Mayans meet each other on the trail, and they've been keeping this as a tradition going back to at least 26,000 years, they say the words in Lakesh. And what that means is, you are another me, and I am another you. That's how they say hello. And it's just the memory of the way it was a long time ago. And this dark night that we're in is almost over. Thank God.
Good. We've been in it way too long.
Yeah, I know. And you know, and there are all these conspiracies. There's a ton of them. When I was hearing you say about the main thing is population control, yeah. Absolutely, that's the primary reason for most of the actions that the governments are doing right now. Because all the computer models show that if we and this is without exception that I'm aware of, that as soon as you reach a certain number, it's debatable on what that number is. It used to be 12 million, 4 billion, 14 billion, yeah. 10 billion. They don't really know what it is, but there is a number out there that when we reach it, not only do all the humans die, but everything on Earth dies.
We just become unsustainable.
And so I can understand why they're concerned about this. But at the same time, Mother Earth is not stupid, and she is allowing these people to come in here. And they're coming from all over the place.
Don't you think this planet, knowing that it's alive, as tragic as it may seem, knows what levels of population this planet can sustain and yes. probably rectifies it?
Yes, it does, and it's already slowing it down. The human male sperm count all over the world is dropping, and it's been dropping for many years now. And now what we're seeing, what I'm seeing as I go around like in Japan and Russia and various places, is the women are coming up to me, young women, and saying, I can't get pregnant, and I'm really trying. And I'm hearing this over and over and over, all over. The women cannot. And I believe that this is, the Mother Earth is slowing down this process. But she's allowed this many to come forth, and exactly why, that's speculation. I don't really know.
Yeah. This consciousness that you have studied and that I am fascinated with ties us into this invisible force in the universe.
Oh, yeah, it really does.
How do we teach people to use it?
Well,
to get on that road.
Like I said, it took me 14 years just to figure out the field. And then it took me really until just the last 6 or 7 years, I've understood all the final details. I mean, I can very quickly show you the complexity of what's inside of us that we have long forgotten. But we have this, just to give you a view, we have an energy field, it's an electromagnetic field. It sits at about 4 degrees Kelvin, or 4 degrees above absolute zero. It's a very weak field, but it's incredibly geometrical. It's so geometrical that to see all the geometries that are around you requires a computer. And this energy field is, when you breathe in a certain way, it spins in both directions, and it looks like a flying saucer around the body, which is the Merkaba. But that's only the beginning. Inside the brain, there are 4 different glands that have to be activated simultaneously to actually turn this on properly. And it can only be done when the spirit of the body leaves the brain, literally leaves it. It travels away from it and moves down into the heart, where the ancients talk about this little tiny place, this sacred place in the heart. There's two of them. There's a sacred place that's very small, and then inside of that is even a smaller one. And this is talked about in the Upanishads 6,000 years ago in India. And when the spirit can move back into the heart instead of the brain, it then goes backwards energetically toward the brain, and it does it through the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Now, why would that have anything to do with it?
Yeah.
Well, you remember when we said there was the human heart and the body came out of the heart? What do you think the first thing is?
The tongue?
The tip of the tongue.
Really?
It's the first thing that emerges out of the body that merges out.
Interesting.
And so you can intuitively see that the sacred space of the heart is connected somehow to the tip of the tongue. And on the roof of the mouth is something that we don't know, but there's literally a sexual organ in there that looks like a vagina with a clitoris, and it doesn't function until it's massaged in a certain way. And when it does, a little bump forms, and the sexual energy flows between the heart and the brain, and it goes to the thalamus. And the thalamus, when you do that, it begins to fire alpha in the 4 quadrants of the brain. And when you do this long enough, and the alpha is equal or relatively equal in the 4 quadrants of the brain, and strong enough, then the pineal gland, which is the third eye, it's literally an eyeball.
Right.
It is hollow. It has color receptors in it. It has a lens on it, and is facing up instead of out at 90 degrees to what we are now. And in the ancient writings, they talk about how you have to bend that. Well, it's with intention. You turn that eye and look out what we call the third eye. But what you're looking at is the pituitary gland, which is right in front of there. And when the alpha is fired up high enough, then when you what appears is a green light appears all inside of you. It could be a greenish yellow or it could be a greenish blue, but it's green in nature. And you begin to look at that direction. Your eyes have to slightly go up because it's a higher place than where your normal eyes are. And when you look at that other one, then what happens is a spiral usually occurs, and it locks those two together, and then there's another one behind it. And when you connect with that one, then around your head, there are these 8 beams of light that are formed, and a sphere appears around your head. And at that moment, whatever you're dreaming in your heart becomes reality in the outer world. And I mean flat out real. And it doesn't. And there are people that are actually studying this. Dr. James Hart, one of the greatest brain researchers on the planet, has looked into all of this and has been able to see that these things are actually occurring. They can scientifically test them as they're happening. They're testing the creation process. You can create with your brain or you can create with your heart, but there's a big, big difference. And so most people in the world are creating with their brain. You remember that DVD that came out called The Secret?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You know, and they made $100 million on that. And they're telling everybody, laws of attraction, you do this, 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 and this, and you can have all the money you want, and everything else is how they talk about it. But when you create with your brain, the brain is a polarized instrument. It is a left and a right side, male and female, and whatever you create, you're going to get the equal and opposite creation coming from behind you where you don't see. So if you whatever you create, you're going to get exactly what you don't want. And it works the other way around, too. If you create something evil, dark, you're going to create something light also. And then you look at all the people that were involved in that and what's happened. They're all in court suing each other, and all the money's tied up in courts, and it will be for years and years and years because that's what's coming back from behind them. But if you create from your heart, it has a single eye, not two.
Is that creating what the old saying was, though, what goes around comes around?
Well, that's karma.
Yeah.
That's karma. That's a little different. Whatever you do, you're going to find the same thing coming back at you. It is related in that you're still creating whatever you do, every word you say, every thought you have, every feeling, you're creating in one way or another. But if you create from the heart, you get only the heart will never create anything that harms anybody anywhere.
I haven't asked you of the date here that you have on the cover of the book, 1949 to 2013. Why that window?
Well, because I really believe that we will not get past 2013. And it's a long understanding of all of this and long talks with the Mayans. The Mayans don't think so either.
It's almost like it's a date on a tombstone.
Well, kind of. There's a certain date in there, February 19th, that I think that is going to be, in the future, is going to be, 2013 will be a very important date.
But when you say we won't get past it, don't we start again?
The old way of existing, the way we are now.
Okay.
We're going to change into something new, and it will, and on that date we will really take off. Though the Mayans, I wish I could say something, but they believe it's going to happen much sooner.
Yeah, when can we expect an announcement from the elders?
They're creating a movie right now. It's called The Shift of the Ages, and this is headed by Don Alejandro Cerrillo, who is the like the president or the Dalai Lama of the entire Mayan nation, of all 440 tribes, and they're creating a movie around him, and where he is going to explain what the Mayans know and what they believe is going to happen. I don't know when that's coming out, but I know they're almost done with it.
Well, the window, according to them, is up to 2015, I guess.
Yeah, somewhere in there. They've never told me the exact date. According to the Hopi, there will be a red star that will appear. And that red star will mark the end of this window.
Well,
but I don't know.
What would be the significance of the red star if we already think the blue one was that comet?
Well, I don't know. It's like right now there is in the constellation of Orion, there's a star about to form a supernova, and it can happen any minute the way it's occurring. And if it does, it will affect us here.
Oh, sure will.
And it will form a huge red star in the sky.
Well,
so maybe that's it. Maybe it isn't. I don't know.
Do they ever look at the biblical book of Revelation, Drunvalo? Do they look at that and say there were signs here too?
The Mayans?
Yeah.
They don't have real good feelings. Most of the tribes don't have good feelings about what from the Christians. Not that they're bad people or anything. It isn't that. It's just that they were persecuted quite heavily. Especially with the conquistadors and what happened to all of that. So they were forced into it. But they have their own ideas, and it's these ideas that we are interested in. Yes, there are books all over the world that talk about this in different ways, not only the Bible, but the first 5 books of the Bible are also very, very important because that's the Jewish Torah. And that's where you have, if you remember a few years ago, we heard about the Bible Code.
Yep.
And
Michael Drosnin's.
Yeah, exactly. And he was the one that revealed that out to the world. I spent a long time with the University of Jerusalem and the work that they were doing there. And it's pretty clear now from what they know now, because they have now looked at the names of over 30,000 people, and in every single case, there the name shows up, the exact date of their birth, the place of their birth, the exact day of their death, the exact place of their death, and in the crossword puzzle running across there is the major accomplishments of their life. What was never revealed is that it is an infinite geometrical progression, and it goes back in every single word that person ever said.
When we come back, we're going to take phone calls with our special guest, the author of Serpent of Light, beyond 2012, Drunvalo Melchizedek. Okay, welcome back, and let's go to the phones. Here we go to Phoenix, Arizona. George, welcome to Coast. You're on with Drunvalo. Go ahead.
Yes. What you said about the mantle melting and so forth, and the say the continental plates shifting around, that'd be like continental drift, chaotic. Continental drift gone awry. It'd be almost like a dog shaking to get rid of fleas. And I believe what you enjoyed said, I always have, about there being a living being or a living thing. And I believe that what you said about 2013, I came up with that date myself because I figure if the plates start shifting around like what you say, it's going to cause earthquakes, volcanoes, and stuff, and hurricanes on a massive scale. So I just wanted to know, how did you come to that conclusion of 2013? And tell me a little bit more about that blue spear. I keep up with astronomy, and I never heard about that.
You picked one question I can't tell you the answer to, is why I came up with that date, because it's tied to certain indigenous tribes, and I'm not supposed to discuss it.
It's their date, right, that they passed on to you?
Yeah, it is. It's something I can't actually discuss, but there is something about that date that's pretty important. But on the other hand, they feel that the poles shifting themselves is probably going to happen before that.
I want to talk about Comet Holmes again.
What?
The Comet Holmes.
Comet Holmes. Oh, yeah, that's a whole different subject. What was the question on that?
He wanted to know a little bit about this blue star prophecy.
Well, if you really want to know, just go on the internet and just Google Comet Holmes. And you can actually see the photographs of it, which are amazing.
It's blue.
It's blue. It's a big blue ball in the sky, bigger than the sun, which is amazing. And you can. It's all recorded, so you don't even have. You can easily just go on the internet and see it all.
Of all the prophecies you've heard, all of them, from the Mayan prophecy, Hopi, and of course Hopi, Maya, maybe one of the same, very similar. But worldwide, is there one that stands out the most for you?
Well, they're pretty much in agreement. This is the thing.
That's what's so scary and enlightening at the same time.
I mean, they do have little things that go off the sides of their prophecies, little things that go off that nobody else talks about. But mostly they are the same. I mean, here I am in South Africa, and talking with Credo Mutwa, and he takes me into his garage, and he's got paintings all over. I mean, just to show you how clear these guys are. And this was right after 9/11, and he's got a painting that was done in 1998. It was right already on there on the wall, and it shows the Twin Towers falling.
Jeez.
Amazing. And right beside it is another painting done in 1999 showing New York City about 200 feet underwater.
I don't like that one.
And so, the indigenous people prophesize all the time, and from the point of view of pure consciousness and understanding what we were starting to talk about, like in the Torah code or the Bible code, it is pretty clear that every word I'm saying right now has already been written down, and everything that's happened has already happened. But what we have discovered in that work with the Torah code is that there are certain geometrical and mathematical points in time, space, and dimension that you can make changes.
Drunvalo, we're going to St. Louis. Here's the guy who brought you to the program, my buddy Johnny Rose. Hey, Johnny, you got through. Good for you.
Hey, in Lakesh.
Yeah, in Lakesh, and thank you, Johnny.
I saw I watched the 14 parts that you have on YouTube, and I was just in awe, especially when you got to the part in the cave, and you had the ceremony inside the earth, and when he said that you're the ones we've been waiting for.
Oh, yeah.
And if you could just describe that a little bit for our Coast to Coast audience. Coast to Coast is such a great group of people. George is like George and Art. And
well, this was a moment. This is out of this is not in The Serpent of Light. It would be a book that comes after that, the sequel to it. But
which I don't have.
No, it hasn't been written yet. I mean, I turned in the manuscript on June of 2007, and in July of 2007, 1 month later, Don Alejandro Cerrillo and his wife Elizabeth, who are the heads of the Mayan nation, came to Sedona and wanted to have a meeting with me, and that's when they said that that the Mayan prophecy says that it's time for them to recollect and remember all of their knowledge and memories and information and their wisdom, and that the world would be watching when this took place. And so he asked me to get 60 people from all over the world. He wanted them from all the continents, and to bring them to Guatemala. Well, I did, and we ended up being from 23 countries and from all the continents. And through a long process, which I think, I don't remember how much I talked about on there, because when I'm talking, I'm just talking. But at one point, they took us into this cave, which goes 28 kilometers into the earth. And it was what the Native Americans here call the Sipapu, which is the place where they came from inside the earth to the outside. All the indigenous people believe they came from inside the earth.
Inside first, yeah.
Yes, and so do the Mayans. And so this was the cave that I believe where that was. And anyway, he took us through many different initiations, ceremonies, and each time he was looking for signs that had to come from Mother Nature. Something you couldn't control. You know, each time there would be condors or eagles or something floating right over the top of the ceremony. There was different things that were happening. And eventually he took us way inside this cave into this amazing place where there's a little, the roof of the cave had broken away and a little tiny beam of light was coming in. It looked very magical. And there we did this ceremony, and whatever happened in that ceremony, he then took us deeper into the caves where he actually initiated us into their family. And later I was back in a restaurant with everybody. There was 60 people, and part of the Mayan Council was there. So the Mayan Council was sitting at a table along with his wife, Don Alejandro and Elizabeth, and that's when he told me, he said, you know, we've had 2 other groups come here, but the signs never appeared, and so we knew they weren't the right ones. But everything appeared. In fact, he said even more than they expected, and he knew in his heart that we were the ones that fulfilled the prophecy. And he started crying, and Rufino started crying, and I started crying. I couldn't help it. And that's when we knew there was we had done something right.
Did they find you, or did you find them?
No, they came to me.
They came to you.
But I've been with the Mayans for a really long time, since 1985, and been doing. In fact, who's Botsman, who was just here, he was going back to 1995 when we did ceremony at Chichen Itza, and I've just asked nothing from them. I'm just trying to help them because I believe they're important in the world's equation.
When I had David Icke on some time ago, I asked him at what point in his career, in his life, did all this happen, where he knew what his mission was, what his goal was, and then the world started to notice. How about you? When did this happen for you? And when did when I say they, the masses, start to notice you?
I don't really know. I've just been doing this forever. Seems like
you've been out there then a long time.
Yeah, I've been teaching since 1984. But for me, I knew something. A long time ago, way back into 1971, I think it was. I decided. I just got out of college and graduated at Berkeley, and I was trying to understand what was going on. I had fought in Vietnam, and I knew that that was believe it or not, that's the first place I found love.
Really?
I was living with the Vietnamese in their homes, and I had never seen the level of love that was there. It shook me up so much And when I came back and went to college, I wanted to find out what was going on in the world because it wasn't
what you thought. Yeah.
What I thought, exactly. And so in 1971, I decided to start studying meditation, and I was studying from a Hindu guru who was teaching me through mantra. And my wife and I were just doing this, and we were really serious. We made white silk robes with hoods and all this kind of stuff.
You went all out.
Oh, yeah. And we were in there, and we're sitting in our living room meditating, and one day these two spheres of light, they were about the size of basketballs. One was a ultraviolet color, and the other was a bright green, came right up to us within about 2 feet away from our face, and this voice came inside my head and said something like, we are not separate from you. We are you at another level of existence. And I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And they are still with me today.
Great.
And,
well, you've touched a lot of people.
Well, they would give me the name, address, and phone number of a teacher. Somebody I'd never, they would write down the name, address, and phone number. And they'd say, call this person, they have something to teach you. And I'd call them up, and it would be that person, which was just...
Was that person expecting you?
No.
Okay.
And these were all famous people, everything from Ram Dass to Kalu Rinpoche to on and on to Kirpal Singh. And I didn't know who they... Sometimes I knew who they were. I heard of them. But many times there were people that nobody knew at all.
Yeah.
And I would go there, and they would teach me something that I needed to know. And then when it was done, they would say, okay, now you go on to this other person.
Great story. Let's go to Louisville, Kentucky. First-time caller. Hey, Rich, you made it through. Go ahead.
Hey, George.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I would like to acknowledge your guest tonight. Thank you for the information that you're passing on to the masses and the listeners of Coast to Coast.
Thank you.
Tonight, I wanted to ask you a question that's been really bugging me a long time.
Okay.
It's about ancient history in Egypt and about an omission in history of Upper and Lower Egypt. From my studies of ancient history and of Egypt, at some point there were two kingdoms in Egypt.
That's right.
And that there were pharaohs that sit on two different thrones. And they were
all kings then. There were no pharaohs until the 18th dynasty.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Well, what has really been bugging me is that there seems to be an omission in history about the people who sat on the throne. I believe it's in Lower Egypt, that were descendants of the original people that were taken into Egypt as Israelites, or as I don't know if they were called Jews at the time. But there seems to have been an omission in their history as far as recorded history is. And I was wondering, do you know anything about the history of the descendants that sat on the throne in Lower Egypt?
Okay.
Well, that's a good question. I've been given a huge amount of information around Egypt because the scribe of Egypt, Thoth, actually, he was one of the people that these two spheres of light led me to, and I studied with him for 12 years. And he told me a great deal about the history of Egypt and what was, but he was leading me in a very specific direction. He didn't talk much about the Jews or the Hebrews at that time. And I know they were there, but you happen to hit on one thing that I really don't know much about.
Do you think there was an ET presence in Egypt?
There was an ET presence on Earth at least for the last 13,000 years, and a lot longer.
Next up, we go to Sean in Madison, Wisconsin. You're up with us east of the Rockies. Sean, go ahead.
Hello, George.
Hi.
And hi, Mr. Melchizedek. What an honor, sir.
Hi. Good to meet you.
My name's Sean. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and the Viscous Circle. And I'm familiar with your Flower of Life workshop and have been since the early 90s. You inspired me to open my third eye, sir, so I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. And, George, I spoke with you and Jay Widener earlier this year. Parts of that night's broadcast ended up on the same song that I had called you about in the first place. Kind of a strange psychic loop that happened there. But Mr. Melchizedek, so many of your ideas and teachings have been the subject matter of my lyrics and stuff for so many years. I just really wanted to tell you thank you, and it would be an honor to send you a copy of my album, Escape Wormwood, when it comes out.
Oh, thank you. I don't know how to do that, but...
when people go to your website, can they email you?
Oh, yeah, you can go to drunvalo.net.
And we've got that linked up at coasttocoastam.com. I should ask you, too, Serpent of the Light, is it out there in Amazon bookstores?
It's on Amazon, or you can go to drunvalo.net, either one. If you go to drunvalo.net, you get it signed.
And then you can put it on eBay.
Yeah, right.
Let's go to, we've got time for one more before the break. Toronto, Canada, Steve, International Line. Stephen, good morning.
Hey, gentlemen. Wow, what a great honor it is to talk to you, Drunvalo. I've got your Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life book. Excellent work.
Super.
But my question for you was, for some time now, I've been thinking about how much of an amazing coincidence it is that we can even have a total eclipse of the sun at all. And, you know, whenever I look at, like, pictures of this, I think it just strikes me as such a spiritual thing to behold. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on the total eclipse and what, like, impact or message it has for humanity in general. Well, it's just such an amazing thing.
Every eclipse is a syncing between a lining up between the Earth and the Moon and the Sun, and throughout time, it doesn't even matter which ancient culture you talk about. These things are all considered significant. If you remember in I'll take this a step deeper, and that is where I mentioned earlier in the program where inside the energy field around the human body there was two spheres that were exactly the size of the Earth and the Moon. Well, now we found the entire solar system, all the planets, all the sizes, and all of their moons. And not only that, but the shape of the orbits, the maximum, minimum, and mean orbits of all the planets, relative even to each other, like Mars to Earth, is all sacred geometrical patterns. And they're all located inside the human energy field. And so when you begin to realize that the outer world is completely defined by geometrical patterns and embedded inside around every single person, you begin to see that the outer world is not just an accident. It is really defined clearly, and there's much more to the world than we know. It's not just eating and having a job and everything else. There's far, far more to this. The Russians have just invented a new science that is going to completely alter this world in ways that it's just practically every single thing we know is going to be changed, and fast. And what they have discovered is that they've now discovered what gravity is, or at least a better idea than anything that's ever been presented before. This is all the problems in relativity and everything else is usually gravity, quantum physics. And through mathematics, they can determine where every single atom, every proton is at any moment in the universe.
We're going to come back with the final phone calls. Coast to Coast AM. Well, next hour, Joshua P. Warren joins us for his weekly Paranormal Moments as we talk about some full-bodied apparitions with Joshua P. When we come back, let's wrap things up here with final phone calls with Drunvalo Melchizedek on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. We'll go to final callers here with Drunvalo Melchizedek. And no relation to the biblical character Melchizedek, huh?
Well,
really?
There may be. Not personally. But it goes back even further.
He would appear at will any place, I'm told.
Well, Melchizedek is not a person. It's a level of consciousness.
It's a consciousness.
And there are millions and millions of them throughout the universe.
All right, let's go to final calls. You ready?
Sure.
Santa Monica we go, California. Hello, John. It's your turn. Thanks for holding.
Thanks, George.
Sure.
As usual, great show. Drunvalo, first I want to tell you how privileged I feel to be speaking with you. I'm really kind of in awe that I'm talking. I have spent 5 or 6 years doing research, really intense research, reading people like Jared Diamond, Greg Braden, William Sullivan, Frank Waters, Michael Drosnin, and I read your works. And in order to write a book that I wrote. And of all the works that affected me the most, it was yours. I found your book, the whole treatment of sacred geometry, the tree of life, Platonic solids, the nature of the golden mean, the inner architecture of life and truth, to be literally at the heart of the universe. And I found it to be that at the heart of your book. I have a question, but I have to explain it. It'll take me 30 seconds to explain it to lead up to the question.
All right.
Go ahead. My book is called The Ascendancy. It deals with Inca prophecy, the Bible code, the Hopi prophecy, the Blue Star Kachina, the Mayans, the Tree of Life, everything you've talked about tonight. What occurred to me after I read your book when I was doing research, when I was outlining my novel, was that all of this comes down to something very simple, and that's the heart and compassion and love for one another. And when 9/11 happened, there was a moment right after 9/11 where there was worldwide compassion for us.
Yeah, there was.
And you could feel it. And I'm 62 years old, and the only time I think I have ever felt anything like that was the assassination of John Kennedy.
Yeah.
And it was a period, it was solid. You could feel it. And it was so powerful, the compassion and the love. And then when that speech was given to go to war against the world, it was like the gate closed for a temporary period of time. And I'm wondering, I look at these structures, these geometric structures, as having a form. Does 9/11, that come into a geometric form structure that we are going through right now, or is that kind of just a prelude outside? Is it part of it?
Well, you can look at everything geometrically and predict time and dimensions and everything. I mean, you can really get into it if you want. But 9/11 was set up by people that, if you want to talk about conspiracies, it's one of the biggest ones ever.
I agree.
And they didn't care about us at all. That's another thing that was not. It is not. It's an illusion. The whole thing was an illusion. There was something else far beyond that, and it was all secret government stuff.
Did you feel, as I had mentioned after that was one of the high points of world compassion?
Well, it really was. The point when the German battleship came across one of our ships and they lowered their flag, and that they were really deeply respecting us, and we had a great chance to unite the world at that moment, but we had a really bad leader that didn't know how to do it, and didn't care anyway, because they Bin Laden didn't have anything to do with this.
Wow. George, can I ask Drunvalo one other question?
One more, sure.
Okay, thank you very much, George. I'm really upset because I'm so pleased to speak with you. December 31st in 1989, I was in a seminary studying to be a priest for 2 years. I've always led a very spiritual life. I was a teacher. I taught for years, taught high school and college. And in 1989, December 31st, somebody took me. I was going through an agnostic, almost atheist period, and somebody, an age-old friend, an old girlfriend, I hadn't seen in 25 years, took me on a guided meditation. And while I was on the meditation, I was seeing space and stars, and I saw a Viking ship with a jib sail filled with wind. And what happened is a four-sided pyramid rose up in front of me. This happened in a millisecond. It did a 90-degree turn. The tip of the pyramid was the most brilliant white light, the top of the pyramid, that I've ever seen in my life. It went into my forehead. It pierced my head. My entire body lit up with light. And the pyramid wasn't an image like you have in a dream. It was solid, like a solid table, or like the furniture or a chair that you sit on. It had that solidity. And my arms and legs wrapped around this, the pyramid, and it was like every cell in my body lit up with light. And this happened in a flash of a second. And I woke up, I looked up with the start, and the meditator said, I said, what the hell was that? And she said, what? And she said, and I described the pyramid to her and what it did, and she said, that's your third eye. And I said, what's the third eye?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of my awakening.
Well, what you're describing, though, is a little more than just the third eye. This is what the Egyptians called the halls of Amenti. And it was something I'd have to sit down with you for about an hour and explain it, but it's a particular level of consciousness. It's very specific.
Very high, too, it seems.
Yeah, it is. And it was actually a man-made level of consciousness that the Egyptians made a long time ago. But I can't, I don't have the time to be able to really do that right now.
We're going to Switzerland now on the international line. Johan, thank you for calling. Hi there.
Hi, thank you for letting me talk to Drunvalo.
Sure thing.
I wanted to ask a question of you, Drunvalo. The Egyptian...
Johan.
Johan.
Okay. Hi.
From St. Gallen. I was going to ask you about the Egyptian temples along the Nile and how they're set up and how they pay homage to a spring in the far west regions of the world that I've traced down to Tarpon Springs, Florida. And have you any information on that, how the shape of the temple indicates that you got to go through the Pillars of Hercules, out the ocean, over to a palm tree forest, and then find a sacred spring?
Well,
have you heard anything about
I
that?
don't know that one specifically, but the Egyptians were all over the world. This is clear. I've seen their hieroglyphs in Australia on both the eastern and the western sides. They've been in the United States. They've been in the Grand Canyon. They're right here behind the Sedona. And they have very special things that are built where they can actually walk through them and end up in Egypt. And they're really real. They're here. We've done a lot of research with this stuff, and the military now has confiscated all these places. You can't even go into them anymore. But the Egyptians were not fixed just there. They had spread out all over the world in various ways. And you could actually see hieroglyphs where you see the earth and you see the polar caps exactly to the right size and everything all over. So, I mean, they had to have explored the world more. But in terms of how they got to that place in Florida that you're talking about, which I have heard about, but I don't know really. I don't know that one. The Egyptians were amazing people, and every of those temples were set up exactly the same way that the human chakra system was set up in the body. And although some of those temples have been moved, like Philae, for example, and they've actually had to move them because when they flooded the Nile, and that changed the energetics dramatically. But those kinds of things are possible, so I would have to look carefully at what you're saying, and but knowing what I know about them, it's possible.
What happened to lost knowledge? Even though through some texts we have information, but basically it seems to be gone or hidden.
Here's the other thing. The Hopi, the Mayans, the the Kogi, the Arawakos, the Wiwas, the Kangormos, and the Tibetans all say that they came from Atlantis. And they're adamant about it. It's not a maybe. And during Atlantis, we did something which had to do with a specific pyramid that was built off the coast of Bimini, which at that time was part of Atlantis. And we misused this energy, which split apart the dimensional levels of the Earth and caused us to drop in consciousness. And it also caused us to lose our natural Merkaba fields, which then, when the magnetics went to zero, and then we lost our memory, and then the poles shifted, and we were just totally devastated by that, and so all of our memory was lost. But what happened was that there were the ascended masters that started all the way back in Lemuria, and there was a few thousand of them, and they were living in the underground city underneath the Great Pyramids, which has now been discovered. It's 6 miles wide, 8 miles wide, 6.5 miles wide, 8 miles long, and 12 stories deep, one solid building. And in there was where the Tot Brotherhood lived, and still some of them are still in there. And there is so much that has happened, but these guys sat there and waited until not 13,000 years, which is where we are now, but there's a quadrant. There's another place at the four directions, and at about 6,000, a little over 6,000 years ago, that's when we had reached this place where they were able to come back and enlighten us again. And so that the members of the Great White Brotherhood, who were actually eternal beings at this point, went out dressed in ordinary clothes like everybody else was wearing at that point, and began to teach. And they taught the Sumerians, they taught the Egyptians. And if you look at Egyptian history, it is an impossible history. Anybody that really knows the history of Egypt knows that something truly amazing took place. They call it stair-step history. Because in a single day, they will learn everything that took thousands and thousands and thousands of years to learn. They learn it in one day. And then a year or so will go by, and then suddenly they learn everything about something else. And that's because the Ascended Masters were giving us our knowledge back again, because they knew that what had happened. Here we are now, 13,000 years later, and we are about in for a really big surprise, and it's a good one.
Well said, and I can't wait. Let's go to Los Angeles. Hey, Brian, you're up with us. Hi.
Hey, George. I was wondering if I could ask Drunvalo, if the 2012 change is going to be about a connection with the heart, why am I feeling the physical desire to move my home, my life, and my family? Second question, who are angels and why are they visiting me? And the third, have you ever heard anything about the Southern Ohio Indian Serpent Mound?
Okay. I'm getting tired. What was the
That's okay. Question? You only got 4 more minutes and you're done. First question is, why does he have this feeling of moving, of having to get away?
There's a very, very good chance that Edgar Casey is correct, and that the pole shift that's going to happen, you may see parts of California disappear. You're going to see tidal waves like you can't imagine. If Ross's Shelf goes into the water and you have a piece of ice almost 2 miles high sliding in, how big would that wave go, and how far would that reach around the world? Being near ocean is not probably a good idea. But on the other hand, we are beings different than what we think we are, and we can survive in ways that we will remember at the right time. We're much older. We're really ancient. We just don't know it, and so you should follow your intuition. I mean, believe in yourself and do what you feel. Follow it. And what was the other one?
Next one was angels.
Oh, the angels. The angels are just beings like us, only on another dimensional level. The dimensions. There's 144 different dimensional levels in this octave of universes, and we're in the third one right now, and they're in the fourth one. It's just a different frequency. It's no big deal. And it's just like changing the television station. When you change the frequency, you get a different image. And they are very close to us and in ways that we can't quite see yet. But every human being is connected intimately with at least two angels.
Last one, Mounds in Ohio.
Well, I'm aware of that one, and I've had certain indigenous tribes talk to me about it.
And I'm aware of the ones in Cahokia, Illinois. It's right across from St. Louis.
There's several out there, and they're really, really important to these tribes. But it's been so long that I don't remember.
That's a Glenn Kimball question, too, so we'll get that to him one day. Let's take one or two more. Let's go to Cashada, Louisiana. Stephen. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
My comment is actually on what you said about the brain functioning with the magnetism in the Earth.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If that's true, then that completely makes sense with evolution in 2012 because it could alter the way our brains function and ultimately cause us to use more than 10%.
When it's reconnected to the heart back in the way that it was a long time ago, we function on 100%. But we will do very similar things like what the dolphins and the whales do. They actually function on half of their brain for a while and half of their brain for the other while. It's their way of sleeping. And we're going to enter into a completely different pattern of existence than we are right now, and this is a very positive thing. We're not going into a negative thing right now. We really are entering into a very, very positive experience that's about to happen.
Very good. Let's get your website out, Drunvalo.
My website is just onelotus.net, or it's drunvalo.net.
That's how you pronounce it. Drunvalo. I've been calling you Drunvalo.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's pretty close, though, for me.
Yeah, I don't even care anymore. All over the world, they pronounce it a million different ways.
But I've got Melchizedek right on.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard that one every way, too.
Well, good luck in everything you do. You've got friends here, so whenever you need us, you let us know.
Yeah, okay, George. I really appreciate all of this, and I hope that it's helped everybody.
You keep in touch with us.
I will.
Okay, thank you very much.